Hello everyone and welcome to our channel. Today we are going to show you how to use Python visuals in Power BI and display predicted sales for October, November, and December based on actual sales for the rest of the year. So let's dive into our today's video. Let's load sales data from Excel file into our report. This data contains actual amounts spent on advertisement and actual sales till September, and then targeted ad spending of $250 is added for each month till December. Let's click on the Load button to load this data into the data pane. Let's start by creating a title for our dashboard using a text visual. Now let's add the quarter field from date hierarchy into our dashboard and change it into a button slicer. We can make our button slicer to display more buttons in one row. And we can add visual borders to our visuals to make them look even better. And now let's add a Python visual to our dashboard and place it here. When we click on a Python visual, we get this Python editor, where we can add Python code. To add Python code, we must first select some fields from our data pane, or add them to values. Now we can add Python code. Let's start by importing the Pandas library, which is used for data analysis and manipulation. Next, we will import pyplot library for data visualization. And finally, to predict our sales, we will use the Scikit-learn library, specifically the linear regression model. Now let's create a data frame named actual data and get the actual data from the dataset. Remember, all fields you add into values are loaded into a data frame named dataset. Here we are simply getting data from dataset, where value of sales is greater than 0. Because the sales data also includes data for October, November, and December, which is not actual. And the sales against those months is 0. Now we are going to create separate variables and store the values of months, advertisement, and sales in those variables. Now we need to define a figure and an axis for our chart. The size of our figure will be 10 inches by 6 inches. Let's draw a line chart showing months on x-axis and advertisements on y-axis. Let's display data points as circular markers. And we can also add a label for our line. Well, instead of advertisements, let's display sales on this line. And let's add some bars to display advertisements. We can use the color parameter to select a color for bars. And once again, let's add a label for these bars as well. Make sure to display legend, as we have already added labels. And finally, use the show function to display the chart. Now, run the code to display the chart. And there seems to be an error. It seems that the month field in date hierarchy was wrongly entered as months. Now the code should work. And here is our chart showing actual advertisement expenses and actual sales on a Python visual chart. We can use the quarters button slicer to display data of individual quarters in the Python visual. Now create a copy of this visual and place it here. Let's turn on visual borders for this one as well. Let's modify the existing code. We are going to need these libraries, so let's leave this code. We are also going to need the actual data for training. Let's delete the rest of the code. Let's copy this code for actual data and modify it to create data for prediction. We are going to use entire dataset for prediction, therefore let's remove this sales filter. Now let's change the source of each variable to predicted dataset, and then change the name of each variable as well. Now we have two sets of variables, one for actual and one for predicted. We're going to use entire dataset for prediction, which means the actual data will be predicted as well, which will make us able to compare the predicted data with the actual data. Now let's create a variable name model and set it to linear regression, same linear regression we imported from Scikit-learn library. Now, using model.fit, we will train our model on actual advertisement and sales data. And now that we have trained our data, we will predict the sales data using the advertisement data from prediction table, which includes actual data, and targeted advertisement data. Let's store the predictions in a variable for future use. Now let's populate the sales data in prediction table using the predicted sales values. Let's create a figure and axis for our chart. We now have both actual and predicted data, therefore it's time to display this data on a chart. So first, let's display the actual sales data, months and sales, from actual data table on a line. Then, we will display the predicted sales data, again months and sales, from predicted data table on a red line. And remember, we have replaced the sales values with predicted sales values in this table. Finally, we are going to enable legend for this chart and display it using the show function. And now, let's run the code. It seems that there is an error in our code, and it is related to the figure size. We forgot to enter an equal sign here. There is another error, and this time instead of marker, we entered market, which we will correct and run the code again. Our code has successfully run, but it seems that instead of passing the predicted values to our predicted data table, we pass them to a variable. Let's correct that and execute the code again. Now the data is correct, and we can see the predicted as well as actual data. And we can use the button slicer to see quarter-wise, actual and predicted data, and compare them. The data of October, November, and December only contains predicted sales. We can use the title property in the visualization section to edit the titles of these Python visuals. And with this, we end our today's tutorial. See you in the next video.